Bobby, this is Johnny. Hi.
Get about 5 feet from us, good. Okay, all the press that are here, we welcome you here. Our media communication center is by the Indigenous Environmental Network, and we help put this press conference together. And I'm going to introduce Johnny. Johnny's one of our camp organizers. If Johnny can come up over here, and he's going to provide the context for this press conference, and I believe he's going to introduce Mr. Kennedy here, who has a couple of remarks he's going to make, and then we're going to ask that the speakers will sit down, and then we have an order here.
Thanks, Tom. Good day, everyone.
Hi, Johnny.
Good to see you. Good to see you. They asked me to make an introduction, and I'm trying to make it on behalf of so many people. We're here at the Oceti Camp. We're here as part of a prayer for Standing Rock. We're here to look at what it means to find commonalities in the protection of our resources and the protection of our water. And they gave me really some good words I was thinking about. That I'm told Mr. Kennedy has an experience, and I know this, an experience of what it means to be running the Water Alliance, an experience of what it means to be a senior attorney for the Waterkeeper Alliance, who's worked in many areas, looking at what happens to our resources, looking at what happens, what it means for us to share them. I guess I didn't know it. Recognized as one of Time Magazine's Heroes of the Planet, working for environmental issues across the Americas and for First Nations in Canada and in other parts of the world. I think it's important. I really welcome you. I ask that people recognize we've been saying now for many, many, many months, and me in my humble way, just trying to look after people in the community, that we're trying to send a voice. And it's a very common voice, trying to bring other people together to hear that all of us have the opportunity to make that choice. So we welcome Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and thank you for coming.
I'm very happy to be here. I was engaged in a battle up in northern Quebec for the Cree Indians. That was one of the first really successful resource struggles in the history of Native Americans. Back in the early 1990s, and we did we spent 2 weeks up in northern Quebec living in teepees and doing the first ascent of the Great Whale River. One of the people who was on that trip, this reservation sent a representative to help in that battle. It was Everett Iron Eyes, who became a lifelong friend to me. And my younger son, Finn, came out to this reservation in the mid-1990s to a naming ceremony. So we feel like we're coming home when we come here, and Waterkeeper Alliance has been on the ground in this battle since August. We've had people here almost continuously working on this issue and working side by side with the leaders of the Standing Rock Sioux and over 100 other tribes that have come here for this very, very historical battle. And it's a battle that, for many of us, invokes the memories of the 1960s when Americans saw on television German Shepherd dogs and fire hoses being deployed against African Americans who were trying to make themselves part of American democracy and to invoke the protections of our Constitution and our federal laws. And that protection was being denied to them, and people who were breaking the law had the power of the police and the military power of the state, the National Guard and the state police, on their side, and they were deploying those weapons against peacekeeping civilians who were protesting peacefully in order to get their right to law and order in their communities. And there's so many parallels with the current battle here. because the people who are at these camps and who are on these barricades are people who are simply asking that the law be enforced against an entity that believes, because it has great wealth, because it's allied with an industry that has always been able to get its way, that it has the arrogance to break the law and then the ability to get away with it. Not only that, but when people stand up peacefully to ask that the law be enforced, and instead of aligning itself with the law-abiding citizens of our country, the power of this state and other states are aligning themselves with the law-breaking entity. Now, I say they're law-breaking because we know I've been an environmental attorney for 30-some years, and I've been fighting these battles, and I know what they're doing is illegal, and that we will win this battle ultimately in court. And they're trying to build this pipeline fast so that they don't have to face their day in court, so that they can say, well, it's already built. You know, yeah, we trampled on some of the laws, but it's already built. A reporter asked me a few moments ago, about an hour ago, you know, what's the point of stopping them now? They've already built most of the pipeline. And I've said to the reporter, well, if you had people who were robbing a bank and they came in the bank with their guns blazing and they tied up people and they started emptying the cash register, and the police then came, do you think the police would say, well, they've gotten this far, we ought to let them just take the money? What's the difference? What they're doing here is a crime, it's an environmental crime, and there's real victims. And what they did is, in order to get away with breaking NEPA, NEPA is our most important environmental statute, National Environmental Policy Act. That was our first environmental statute, passed in 1969, and it was the first time that the U.S. government said that when somebody has a proposal to do something that requires a federal permit that is going to distribute or possibly diminish the value of federal or change the use of publicly owned lands and resources, that they have to do a cost-benefit analysis first. They're required to do that. And what this company did is an old trick. What Congress did is they said, look, we don't want, if somebody's going to do something that is de minimis, that's something that's inconsequential. For example, and this is the example they gave at the time. You need a Corps of Engineers permit to change the pilings on a dock. So every 20 years, those pilings rot. You need to get new ones. You need a Corps of Engineers permit to do it, so you need a federal permit. Should that person have to do a full environmental impact statement? The answer is that Congress said, no, we don't want them to have de minimis actions to do an environmental impact statement. So we're going to create a provision of this law called the environmental assessment. It's a shortcut. It's for things that are so inconsequential, so de minimis, so meaningless, that we can say there's going to be no environmental consequences. Well, this company took that little loophole and they tried to draw it around a 1,200-mile pipe. XL Pipeline didn't even think it could get away with that. XL Pipeline, which is only 7 miles longer than this one, did the full environmental impact statement. But the way that they did it is called segmentation, and it's an old strategy, and it is a device of chicanery that when we wrote NEPA, everybody foresaw. And we said, well, what would happen if a really devious, diabolical polluter said, I'm going to build something, but I'm only going to build it a little bit at a time, the airport or whatever, and therefore each segment I won't have to do it. It will just be an incremental change in the status quo, so I won't have to do an environmental impact statement. And Congress foresaw that, and they said, no, we're not going to let them do that. They have to look at the whole project, the whole program, and you can't segment it. There's a section of NEPA that is an anti-segmentation section. It says you can't segment a project. If it's a big project, you have to admit it's a big project. You have to do the EIS for the whole thing. So they're trying to invoke that loophole for a project that is going to disrupt 209 streams. If they had to build a pipeline across one stream or one river like the Missouri River, they'd have to do a full environmental impact statement. They're trying to invoke that loophole for a project that will produce the same amount of carbon pollution as 29 coal-burning power plants. If somebody built a single power plant and the only environmental impact it had was the carbon, they still have to do an environmental impact statement. And CQ passed rules in August that specifically said they got to do it for carbon discharge. So we know what the law is. This company knows what the law is. They use a flim-flam to break the law. And now when peaceful protesters are saying, wait a minute, we want to see a cost-benefit analysis, the company is saying, no, we're not going to do that. And the reason they don't want to do it is because they don't want the American people to see the results of that cost-benefit analysis. Because we all know what it says. This pipeline is not going to benefit the American people. This pipeline, this is what they'd be forced to disclose. This pipeline is going to benefit a few billionaires like Donald Trump, and it's going to make them richer by impoverishing the rest of us, by impoverishing the American people, by diminishing quality of life for people all over the globe, by adding to global warming, which is the biggest threat to civilization. Somebody asked me a few minutes ago, again, what did I think, what would my message be to Donald Trump? And, I don't want to make a judgment about what Donald Trump is going to do or what he's not going to do, because I don't know. I know what he said. What he said is that he wants to build this pipeline, the XL pipeline, and many, many other pipelines. And I hope that before he takes the reins of power, he will educate himself about energy policy. And he will understand that this is something that may be good for his pocketbook, but it's not good for America. And it's not good for the world. This pipeline will not benefit this country, because the oil from this pipeline, we know, is going to go to Asia, and it's going to go to Latin America. So it will increase supplies in those nations, which is not good for our manufacturers. It will create pollution, which is not good for our children. It will create global warming. President-elect Trump has said that he wants to go after ISIS and he is going to crush it. But the Pentagon, I would hope that before he makes decisions about this pipeline, that he assesses properly the risks and rewards. And what he'll find, and I hope he asks the Pentagon, what is the greater threat to this nation, ISIS or global warming? Because the Pentagon has already answered that in a very comprehensive report. And they've said the single greatest threat to American security is coming from global warming. This is a national security threat. What these people are doing is not good for the American people. It is good for a few billionaires, but it's not good for the rest of us. They could not do this. What they wanted, this is a part of a recognition that they are dealing in a carbon fuel that no longer has an economic rationale in the marketplace. In addition to my advocacy work, I also do entrepreneurial work, and I'm part of companies that are building power plants. Including two of the largest power plants in America, solar power plants and wind plants. So I know what the cost of solar and wind is, and I'll tell you this: the plant that we built in the Mojave Desert cost $3 billion a gigawatt, a solar plant. The one we built that now, and that was 7 years ago, now the cost of that plant would be $2.4 billion a gigawatt. How much would an oil plant cost? $3 billion. So they know the end of their industry is in sight. And what is their strategy? Their strategy is they know they can't compete against wind and solar on a fair market in a free capitalist society, on a level playing field. So the only way that they are going to be able to maintain their market domination is to force us today to invest in all of this infrastructure, which is going to anchor them no matter when, long past the time when any rationale for oil has come and gone. So the Koch brothers specifically, but the oil industry over the past 15 years has made it very easy to build a pipeline in this country. As you can see here, they can without even having a permit, they can come and exercise eminent domain and condemn people's land and put their pipeline across their land without even having a permit to cross the streams that they got to go through with a full federal permit. They're still doing that. It's very, very simple to build a pipeline, and at the same time, they've made it nearly impossible to build a transmission line in this country. Why? Because transmission lines are the media for wind and solar, and they want to kill that industry by stopping us from getting it to market and make it very easy for themselves to build pipelines. So in the past 12 years, we built 16,000 miles of pipeline in this country and only 600 miles of transmission lines. 150 of them built by my brother and myself. So what they're trying to do is they've now got $23 trillion of infrastructure. And that's the only thing that they've got because they cannot beat us in the marketplace. And they're trying to build these pipelines as quickly as possible to wrap our nation, to wrap our children, to wrap our future in their antiquated, dinosaur, outmoded fuel with no economic justification in the marketplace. And the way they do that is they get a lot of people involved in their schemes. When they build a pipeline like this, they don't pay for it themselves. They get the money from pension funds, from Citibank, from Wells Fargo, from all of these big players